because there's so much stuff is going on COVID, and it is obviously in everybody's mind that what's going to happen. So I thought that this will be a good opportunity for us to uh, go ahead and have a discussion. In fact, I am planning to have a series of discussion where each of them will be around 30 minutes, and I want to share a bunch of thoughts which comes to me. Everything is based on the data which is available in the public sphere. Nothing is my interpretation or whatever. And the flow will be maybe around 10-12 sessions. First, what is this corona 19 or covid-19 all about, where it started, some basics. There are a lot of terms which we are using, but many of the times these terms are not clear to everybody. Second is we look into the economy impact and what sort of intervention the various governments are thinking about, including Indian government. And last is essentially to get into various industry segments and find out, what sort of impact which we are going to see. Uh, the last part is probably of greatest interest to the students of School of Management, but I felt that a little bit of background of the whole scenario, including the economic part, will be a good ground for us to be aware, both from the perspective of social life where everybody is discussing, but more so from the perspective of getting into industry. Because whether you face interview, get into a job, whatever it is, we'll definitely going to have discussions around this, at least for next 9 to 12 months. So what I did is I have put 6 slides, okay, and it's not a very long PPT. I have shared with all of you. If some of you are not able to see what I'm presenting, but only on the audio, you can just go through the slides. I will call out the slide number. I am not going to read the slides. I will give a gist of all the slides that I am presenting, and maybe we'll have 5-10 minutes max towards the end to take some questions. If we can't handle the questions, we'll obviously go ahead and take the questions offline. Okay, so I'm moving to slide number 1, the after the title slide. Okay, so as I said, it is not a course, it is not a lecture. It is essentially to get a broad understanding of what's going on around us. I want to do for next 7-10 days, every day 30 minutes at 8 o'clock, purely voluntary attendance. Look at some, today we look at some of the events where it happened, some of the definitions, and as we go forward, look at the economy, the response of the various governments, and of course, what industry impact, and if at all we have interest towards the end, we can also have a session or two on how society is coping up and what we can do, what other people are doing. Because for most of us, it is once in a lifetime experience, right? So I'm moving to the next slide. Uh, yeah. So we are calling this coronavirus on the top left. You see the I can all of you go into mute, please, because there's some. Otherwise, I have to mute all of you because there's some. Yeah. Okay. So, corona, if you look at the definition of corona, corona essentially means a crown. And we are familiar with this term called coronation, which, if somebody becomes a king or queen, that the crown is put on people's head. And if you look at the photograph in the middle, which is a typical crown, which you have all seen in all sorts of movies and books, it is, it has this pointed structure. On the top of that there is this balls, and if you go back and see the top left, which is the coronavirus as it looks under the microscope, that is a similarity, and that is from where this corona name came. And if you look at the set of viruses, of which corona is one, there is a family of viruses which we have. If you see, even if you go back and look at the SARS or bird flu or MERS, and these are the terms which we'll be using a little more, you will find more, all these flu viruses somewhere or other looks very similar. But since corona has become very famous globally, I think the name has been given to it. And the other definition of corona is on the left bottom, where it is the outer edge of something glowing. Typically, if it is a star or any other object which is reflecting light, and you have see the edges which is very glowing, that is also called something corona. This is something which I kept just as a sort of a quiz question, because tomorrow if somebody says why coronavirus is called corona, is something which we probably should know. Maybe many of you know, but just a good to know sort of thing. But real crux of the matter which I'm going to produce is in the next slide, which I have called as the sequence of events. This is widely discussed, and I think very controversial at this point of time. 31st December, Wuhan Municipal Corporation said that they have seen a new type of virus, which is a very similar to flu in terms of symptoms, but not exactly the same. And that apparently had come from the Wuhan market, which you have all heard about. That it has got a lot of negative publicity, as a matter of fact. And then they made the genome or the gene structure of that virus publicly available on 9th of January. Okay. Sorry, on 10th of January. But before that, China CDC, that is the Critical Disease Containment Center, called it as SARS-CoV-2, SARS CoV-2, the virus causing as COVID-19. Now, SARS is a term which we are familiar for last almost 18 years. If you go back, you will hear about early 2000, there was this SARS attack, which stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. So it is very similar to that, but there are certain features which are different. So they called it SARS family. CoV stands for coronavirus, the mutated version 2. And we have been calling it as COVID, which is again coronavirus disease 2019. They first named it. 10th, they sent the genome structure to WHO, and that is where the entire world started analyzing the genome or the gene structure, and started looking for what is the antidote or what is the vaccination that is available for it. Then 20th January it started spreading. First it started in Europe. 23rd January, Wuhan was locked down. You have seen that Wuhan has been, has been the lockdown has been removed very recently, almost after 90 days, because there is no new cases. And 30th January, the World Health Organization called it a public health emergency of international concern. Much later, on 11th of March, it called it a pandemic. Now, we'll come back and quickly see what is this epidemic, pandemic, endemic. These are the terms which we use. India was pretty much active. India, as far as my understanding, India created the first task force on COVID-19 on 7th of January. And 17th of January, it circulated the preliminary guidelines to all the state governments. 18 January, India gave a notice for thermal screening at various airports, and 21st January we started at 7 airports. We primarily with the China returned individuals, and then of course the whole thing. India reported its first COVID patient on 30th of January. uh, India probably are on two counts, are first in the whole world. One is that we have started restricting the movement of many countries, including China. Probably the first one to do that restriction, and probably the first one to ban all sorts of travel except for certain kinds of individuals from across the world. So these are the two points which are we acted very proactively. Uh, then next is I am moving into this pandemics, and I will come back and discuss a little bit of pandemic term, because as you have seen initially, we are all being saying that this particular thing is epidemic, and then WHO said it's pandemic. Now pandemic has a long history, and clearly the history gives us pandemics which are much more severe. If you look at this table, the Spanish flu, which happened approximately 100 years back, where 40 to 50 million, that is 4 to 5 crore people were killed, right? Today, if you look at our total number of mortality, 110,000 is actually very low compared to some of these numbers. 5,000, 541, 42 AD, the plague of Justinian. Again estimated 50 million people died, and that point of time the world population was much less, so it was a much higher percentage of the population who would have died. But today, because of the social media, global connectivity, and obviously our awareness and the whole focus on human life and the value of human life, it is obviously attracting adequate amount of attention. It is a very serious matter, but there have been pandemics which have been much more severe, at least in terms of spread and number of deaths. There are two other terms which is mentioned here. If you look at, I'm trying to move my if you are on Zoom, you can see it, that what are the uh, uh, you know type of virus or bacteria that was involved. Now if you look at, there are many cases these pandemics happened because of bacteria, like Great Plague of London, right? It has happened because of bacteria. If you look at Spanish flu, that happened because of virus, and current one is a virus infection, coronavirus, right? The other thing is, what is the pre-human host? And this term I would like to spend a little more time in the next slide, which will be a very important slide for all of us. That where from it came, right? We are all talking of it came from rats or bats, all those sort of things. And again, for surety, nobody knows really that where it has come from, who is the host just before it came jump to the humans, right? And on the right side, if you look at, there are this some graphical representation of bubonic plague, which happened around 800 years back, which you talk of black plague, and you would have all heard about it. It killed 200 million people, which is almost 20% of the population of the entire earth at that point of time. So you can understand the scale of those sort of pandemics. If you can just go on your mute, all of you, then it will be good. I am muting Mr. Bhattacharya. Okay. Okay. Now, uh, before we get into some of the specific terms like virus and host and all that, I just wanted to make sure that we understand what is Wuhan. We are all hearing about it. Many are saying it's a province, which is correct. It's a capital. Wuhan is not a province. Sorry, it's a capital city of a province, Hubei province. Around 10,000 square kilometer is the area, which is 10 times the size of New Delhi. Population of around 2 crores and a very high per capita income. If you look at per capita income, which is like almost 4.5 to 5 times of India. So I wanted to share this per capita income because that gives a sense of resources that is available to Wuhan. You have all heard that China has gone ahead and built a 17-story hospital with 10,000 beds in 17 days and all, because obviously they have that sort of financial power. We may not have that, if we face a very severe situation. And the other player out here is that World Health Organization, which we all know about. The World Health Organization is a organization where there are 194 member states. It is essentially responsible for the global health to be maintained. It advises people, give guidance, do research, make various countries to come together. But World Health Organization is funded by countries, and the funding is voluntary. which means that we as a country doesn't have an obligation, though we are a member, that we have to pay so much amount. And that has created a lot of controversy because one of the primary donors of World Health Organization is China. And that is why a lot of people are accusing that because of that relationship, World Health Organization has been very slow in declaring it as a pandemic. By the time, a lot of damage has been done. And if you look at their budget, $4.2 billion, which is like 30,000 crores, which may appear a lot of money, but if you look at the scale of work which they're doing, it's a very small amount. So they are hugely dependent on funds from countries, and there may not be, it may not be entirely a speculation that they did something which favored the Chinese government. Wherever possible, I have put some URLs and you can check it out. WHO has a lot of good reports if you want to get in to details, including daily updates. That is the most authentic source of global database at this point of time. So that's where I was telling, I think somebody was saying China is responsible and all of that, but they are all speculation. We can only talk of data which has been verified by the government of India or World Health Organization, or if you're looking at CDC of China or CDC of USA. We cannot look at any data because the data can be, a lot of fake data may be there. Then there's some terms I just quickly wanted to go through. We all have heard about bacteria and virus, but there is a basic difference. This is basic biology. All of you would have read. Virus, as you know, bacteria are living organisms. Sorry, whereas bacteria are. So virus is something which is just one second. Virus is something which is, as we call it, is neither dead nor alive. So it is in between. So that's why virus can survive in intergalactic space. Virus can survive for thousands of years without dying. But virus, when it comes to a host, which is actually compatible with that virus, what it does is it forces that host body cells to reproduce the virus, and that is how the virus and then once there are sufficient number, the virus actually transmit to other people. Now this is a very very important concept here, that for the virus to be active you need a host, and there are millions of types of viruses in the world. Okay, but and they are in humans at times, but we don't feel it because they may not be very strong to overcome our immunity, or it may be benign, which means it is not causing something which is dangerous to us. And there are tons and tons of viruses which are there in the animal world and the plant world, and we are constantly ingesting or eating those, or they are coming inside our body by various means, by breathing, by eating, by touching. But unless we are a host to the virus, that virus is not damaging to us. Okay, which means that the virus has to find me as a host, and then it will start replicating itself, and then it will get transmitted, and then it will do damage to me. So this particular virus, which is COVID-19, was already there in whatever was the host. There where people are speculating that it is rats or bats or something. We will also see what is the current speculation. Nobody is sure, and people have been getting that virus because people probably were eating or in rearing those things, because in China and all, people eat bats, rats, and many other animals, wild animals. But what happened in the November of last year is that it got mutated. So the animal form of the virus got mutated, and it became a form which becomes which human body is a host. So that is where it sort of exploded, and it started showing its the symptoms. Right now, here I have
Called a jump.
yeah. So here I have
It's called a jump.
Yeah, jump, yes. Jump from the, you're right, jump from the host, animal host, to the human host. Okay, because it
Host jump,
mutated.
yeah.
And there is some speculation that it has again mutated, and now there are two varieties, and people are saying, right, that it travels 3 feet, 6 feet, 9 feet, so it may change and it may become more
Briefly
lethal.
it gets airborne.
Yeah, it may get
Briefly it gets
upon.
airborne.
Yeah, so that is a mutation. Now epidemic is something which is a big issue when it happens inside a country. When the same thing happens in multiple countries, that is pandemic. That's why it started in China, it was epidemic, then it became pandemic. There is this word called endemic, which is a very serious, which is a localized issue within a country or within a province. And when it becomes very fast spreading, even if it is localized, means it may happen in say Kolkata or Bangalore, but suddenly spreading very fast within Kolkata, Bangalore, it is called an outbreak. Now, of course, epidemic, pandemic, outbreak, endemic, these are the terms people use very interchangeably. But we should know that pandemic is very important in this case, because only when it was pandemic, then every country got into action. People started saying, I will not allow travel and all, because in normal circumstances India says, I will not allow people from USA to come here or China to come here. You will be facing legal issues, because you cannot do that. But only when it was declared, we could do all this, right? And then SARS is, as I said, that it was the 2017 we had the SARS. Then in between we had something called MARS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. And this is a sort of family. You will hear these H1N1, H2N1, and there are 144 varieties of these flu viruses are there. Some of them has there again they are categorized as category A, B, C. C is the least risk, and category A is actually the more dangerous one, which you hear. But on and off every time, somewhere or other, some of these diseases are actually going on. Coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2 is actually the scientific name. COVID-19 is actually the unofficial name. We are using it liberally, but that is not the name which the scientists are using. That is one difference we should be aware of. I will move to the next one, which is probably the last or second last. I probably the last one. And then essentially the last one. So there is a speculation right now, which we are not sure, that people say the primary host was bat. From bat it came to one intermediate host, which is called what is this called, piglolia or
Pangolin.
something, huh?
Pangolin. It's called
Bengalia,
pangolin.
which in India is called some Notunbo or something. I don't know. I mean Bengali, and I think it's called Notunbo or something. But I have never seen it in my life. And then it was eaten by somebody. It was being eaten for years. China started eating these wild animals 30, 40 years back, when China faced severe famine actually, and they were not having enough food, so they started eating anything and everything, and that is where they started this habit of eating all sorts of wild animals. So pangolin is something they have been eating, but unfortunately it mutated, and it came to somebody in Wuhan, who transmitted it to others. And that's where I think the next to, if you see the middle image where you see some black face and red face, this is a very, very important term. It is called R0, or uh, you know R naught, actually not R0, R naught. R naught is the it is to measure how contiguous, or in Bengali we call it choache, right? And some of you will understand. High contagious, not guas. Contagious is a disease. So 1% will infect how many people? So the most contagious disease which we normally have is measles, which is a right bottom. 1% can infect 16 people. But measles is not that dangerous. Uh, the smallpox, which you all heard about, uh, you know, had now we, of course, we don't have smallpox anymore, eradicated. You have R naught, means 1% will be infecting 6 people. This one, the COVID-19 is 2.5 people. So if you see, compared to measles, compared to smallpox, even compared to SARS, which we talked about, which happened 17 years back, it is much less in R naught. But COVID is very dangerous on two counts. One is that obviously it has it has no antidote, or you don't have any immunity against it. You doesn't have any sort of uh, vaccine, which is true for any new virus. But it is also at this point of time airborne, okay, which was not the case with for example SARS. It could transmit to other meats, ways like touching and all that, but COVID has become airborne. That is the most dangerous thing. So on the right side, the same thing has been represented. But if you look at 2.5 people actually gets infected by one individual, and then that 2.5, each of them will be infecting 2.5, so it will become a geometric progression, right? 2.5 will now become 4.7, and that 4.7 will become 12, and 12 will become 27. That is how it will be progressing, right? And that is where the top right, this is the COVID, the graph for today, which I picked up from Microsoft COVID tracker. You see this graph, which is essentially a geometric progression. That is where everybody is saying we have to flatten the curve, right? Flatten the curve means if we cannot allow this geometric progression of transmission, because very fast people will become, the large number of people will be affected, and then our health system will totally collapse. The other thing about the COVID is that 86% of the people, even if they are carrying the virus, they will not be showing any symptoms, but they will be they can potentially transmit it to other people if they are close by, like sneezing and touching. And we all know, we wash your hand, and don't touch this, don't touch that. And among the remaining 14% also, a significant number will be showing very mild symptoms, and people will think it is a flu or it's a fever. So we don't know. See, while India is saying we have 10,000 cases today, I think we are reaching almost 10,000. uh, but there may be 100,000 people, or 1 million people. I don't know. I don't want to give a number. We don't know the number of people who are already carrying the virus, right? And that is where the lockdown is coming, because since we don't know, so if we knew only 1,000 people are affected, which we know, and we have found out all their all who have come in touch with them, and we have isolated some 1 million people across the country, maybe 20 lakh, 2 million people, 20 lakh people, and they are in various places, including our campus also we have given. But we are not sure whether this 1,000 is the only one affected. It can be me who is affected, you can be affected. That is where this lockdown is all about, and that is the attempt to flatten the curve so that you don't have the geographic progression. Okay, the next slide is the last slide. I have put some data sources, global data. As I said, please always look at valid data, which is the WHO, the first one. India data, government of India data, you look at, MyGov. There is an app for, Arogya Setu. I don't know whether you have downloaded. You can look at, you can do a self check also, how are you doing, or if you need any support and all that, you can always use that. There are a few other apps which has been developed, where is the nearest patient, in your pin code, how many people are there. There are some interesting background, uh, you know, there are certain interesting discussions which are there. I've given the links. So everybody is talking about Bill Gates talk, gave a TED talk, but off late also he has spoken twice. And there is Dr. Fauci, who is the head of CDC in US. He has given a couple of discussions which are very good. Readings, the first two links are a consolidation of various sorts of reading. The second, highly recommended by many, is a three articles written on Medium by a VC, the which is a venture capitalist. based out of US, but he has written extraordinary three pieces. I think you can find time, read it. He talks about the disease, how it will pan out, and what will be the impact of business, what policymakers can do. And the last one is, I have just given that if somebody is very interested in the the biology of it, all this H1N1, which are SARS virus, right? So these H and N are actually two antigens, and there are 8 types of antigen, and there are 16 types of N antigen, and the combination makes it 144 types of viruses. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good, some of them are ugly. But that is what is explained, so that you also get a sense next time somebody say H3, you can have H5N5, H4N3, all sorts of combinations. So and that is what I have put up today. I will take up a discussion tomorrow on what is the economic impact at the macro level. People are talking of $2 trillion of loss globally. India is, probably still trying to get the numbers, Niti Aayog and all that. We our state, wherever we are, the state governments will have challenge, because the economic activity has come to a standstill, and there will be most of the industries will suffer because people will hold back on their expenditure, right? Because we are in uncertain times, right? So if you look at certain industries are clearly on the back foot. Tourism industry, wherever there is a discretionary spend, white goods, electronic items, consumer goods, brown goods, FMCG. So we'll discuss a little bit about that and what sort of stimulus government is giving. So some countries, like if you look at Japan, has given 10% of its GDP. Out of two, they are four. They are at 20%. Sorry, they have given $950 billion, which is like their out of $4 trillion, around 25%. India has done 175 lakh crores, which is like 2-3%, because we are a $2 trillion economy, so it's just 1.5%. US has said that everybody they will be transferring $1,000 to their accounts. India also is talking of direct benefit transfer, and we have other things, of course. State governments are taking a lot of action. So what sort of actions governments are taking? Because this is a very uncertain time, and this is where I think we should also think any possible help locally, globally. Everybody's out there to get new ideas, because nobody knows how it will pan out and when it's going to end. You can reach me on this number or email. I'm most welcome, because we are not having any discussion now. I just want to tell that a lot of people are saying that there will be a lot of social changes, and I think that is real. But there will be one immediate impact which you'll see is the travel, because a lot of countries will not allow other people from other countries to come in unless they are sure that that person is not carrying the virus. And obviously, without a vaccination, you don't know. You can do a test and go, but then that is one thing. And I think that India also will do that. And even the travel locally, and keeping a social distancing and all that is going to be there, because the most optimistic timeline to get a vaccination is around 18 months, right? And then vaccinating the whole world of 7.5 billion may take another 2 years. So a significant amount of change will happen in business, personal life, professional life, and I think it is very important for all of us to think through, because this is going to impact our life very significantly in next 3-4 years, if not at least for next 2 years. So I'll stop here. If there is a very quick feedback or anything, I'll just take it. Otherwise, we'll close.